On Tuesday, February 13th, once again, concerned Port Moody citizens, along with a coalition of environmental groups that included Force of Nature Alliance and the Laudato Si Circle, were at Port Moody City Hall to make sure that the council heard their pleas for the city to take part in a class action lawsuit to seek compensation from big oil interests.
Sue Big Oil! 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 Sue Big Oil!
I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for the meeting of February 13th, 2024. We'll start off with the territorial land acknowledgement. The City of Port Moody carries out our business on the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Coquitlam, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, Squamish, Katzie, Kwantlen, Kikate, and Stolo peoples, and extends appreciation for the opportunity to work in this territory. Next item is agenda. Does somebody want to move the agenda? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll move into public input. Policy. I'm looking at the speakers list, and I noticed that Mark Norbury is on there. This is public input. It's not the delegation. So if you wanted to speak, you can. But if this was intended for the delegation, then we'll get to that at the next item. So I'll call Mark Norbury if you'd like to speak. If you would like to speak to council, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Mark Norbury, and I live in Port Moody. I would like to say a few words about the Sue Big Oil proposal, but this is just as public input.
Yep.
I support this because it will save our city money. Climate change costs are with us, whether we like it or not. Some cities and municipalities are simply reacting to climate costs as they hit them. Port Moody, on the other hand, is very proactive because it has a climate action plan, which yourselves, Mayor Latty, Councillor Lubick and others have been very instrumental in initiating. So we are at least aware of what the expected costs will be, and they have been calculated to be anywhere up to $8.6 million. The Sue Big Oil proposal is not about paying more climate costs or paying more towards climate mitigation and adaptation. No, it's actually about saving costs and getting a good return on investment. Fossil fuel companies, through their operations and products, are responsible for about 30% of greenhouse gases, but they're currently paying nothing to mitigate these costs. A successful lawsuit might give us 30% of 8.6 million, which is about 2.6 million. Port Moody's contribution would be $1 per population, so that would come to about $36,000. We pay this amount and can expect to receive back $2.6 million. That's a good return on investment. Now, I'm a businessman and I understand that. Who would not pass up on this deal? And it's not $36,000 per year, it's just a one-off single payment. So we know for sure that climate costs are going to hit us, but this lawsuit will significantly reduce the impact of these costs. $36,000 is a small price to pay, and it doesn't even have to be paid for from this year's budget, but just needs to be earmarked ready for when the lawsuit is paid for. Thank you.
Thank you. I would look for a motion to receive public input. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's a new process for us. Next item is the delegation. Sue Big Oil. And just a reminder, you have 5 minutes. And I believe that we have received your package. There you go. Go ahead.
All right, good evening, Mayor Latty and Port Moody City Councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight about the Sue Big Oil campaign, Port Moody, on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. My name is Justin Arsenault, and I am speaking to you tonight as a concerned Port Moody resident and as a member of the Port Moody Laudato Si Circle based at St. Joseph's Catholic Parish. Andrew Gage from West Coast Environmental Law is also here with me tonight to help answer any questions you may have. Tonight, we are asking you to vote in favor of Port Moody joining the Sue Big Oil campaign. Sue Big Oil is a new campaign that launched in June 2022. You may have heard from other climate campaigns in the past, but this one is a bit different, so I hope you will listen with an open mind. This campaign aims to gather municipalities together from across BC to launch a class action lawsuit against major oil companies in order to recover the costs we face locally from climate change. British Columbians have already seen firsthand some of the costs we face due to climate change. Here in Port Moody, we've seen our beloved boardwalk damaged and requiring replacement because of high water. We lived through the heat dome of 2021, and we face increasing risks of flooding, landslides, and forest fires. Facing those dangers, I am grateful that the city has already started the hard work of preparing for climate change. Our Climate Action Plan identifies a number of risks and 8 focus areas for adapting to and mitigating climate change, and outlines our expected costs. Considering just the costs of adapting, we are looking at between $1 million and $8.6 million in costs. This is in the coming decade alone and does not include many other costs that are still being identified. These costs will only rise. So without additional funds, we will be faced with a choice between raising taxes, cutting services, or leaving Port Moody vulnerable to climate impacts, all of which leaves residents and businesses on the hook. Meanwhile, scientists are increasingly able to quantify the specific contributions of individual companies through both their operations and products to climate change. Just 90 entities, mostly fossil fuel companies, are responsible for almost 2/3 of human-caused greenhouse gas emissions. Many of these companies were put on notice that their products were causing climate change in 1959 by Dr. Edward Teller. By the 70s and 80s, they had detailed information about the impacts of burning fossil fuels, but continued with business as usual, making massive profits. When government started taking action in the late 80s and 90s, these companies engaged in a well-documented campaign of misinformation and lobbying to prevent climate action. Even now, fossil fuel companies continue to put their short-term profits over the health of our communities. Recently, BP, Shell, and Suncor rolled back their climate commitments because they are literally making too much money from fossil fuels. It is completely justified for us to ask these companies to pay their share of the cost of climate change. Subic Oil aims to do just that. So why should we get involved in Port Moody? First, class action cases like Subic Oil can succeed. We've seen it in lawsuits against tobacco and opioids. We saw it in the Netherlands in 2021 when the environmental organization Milieu Defensie won their lawsuit against Shell in Dutch courts. To date, there are over 40 local and state governments suing fossil fuel companies in the US, as well as similar cases in Germany and Switzerland. In Canada, 28 law professors have written a letter to local governments explaining that there is a legal basis in Canadian law for Subic Oil. It is also financially manageable. Port Moody would pledge just $1 per resident, around $36,000, and this would only be required when a local government steps up as lead plaintiff. These funds would be enough to get the case to the certification stage, when a judge would confirm that the case has merit. If the case does not clear that hurdle, nothing further would be required. If the case goes forward, there would be a range of fundraising options, and a future council would have no obligation to make further contributions, but could choose to do so with the benefit of the judge's ruling on the strength of the case. For a local government that chooses to be lead plaintiff, BC's class action law protects the parties from having to pay a portion of the other side's legal fees if unsuccessful. Subic Oil is also popular. According to a poll from 2022, when British Columbians understand that suing fossil fuel companies is a way to get them to pay some of the costs that otherwise fall to taxpayers, they support the idea of local governments bringing such a lawsuit with broad support across the political spectrum and across the province. The benefits of filing such an action are almost immediate. Early on, a judge will need to confirm that the case has merit, giving both the local governments and fossil fuel industries a clear indication that this case can be won and changing investor behavior. When successful, it will get needed resources for our community to ensure that we can protect our residents and businesses from climate change impacts. The communities of Gibsons, View Royal, Squamish, just last week Qualicum Beach, and just this week Slocan have already joined the campaign, and there are more to come. Tonight, we have the opportunity for Port Moody to join Subic Oil. I urge you to take this step to secure a safe, vibrant, and fiscally responsible future for our city.
You are amazing at keeping it within 5 minutes. That is like the beep. That's the flash. Good job. Thank you very much. I'm going to open it up to council if they have any questions. Councillor Knowles and then Councillor Actrap.
Thank you so much for that. I actually really enjoyed that presentation. I understand how passionate so many of you are about this topic. And in fact, I think we're all passionate about the effects and mitigation of climate change. So, I mean, without further ado, I'm prepared to move that we receive the delegation for information and maybe refer to staff for next steps.
Okay, so it's been moved, received, and forwarded to, or referred to staff. Well, it's not quite option 2, because option 2 This is referring to staff. Yes, and it will come back to council, to subsequent council, but it's going to go to staff first. So they can.
Into a future.
Okay. It'll come back to a future council meeting. And we will let you know when it does. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. I have Councillor Agtrab. Councillor Knowles, did you have anything else to add?
Not at this time, no. I think I'm happy with it coming forward at another meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Agtrab.
I was just going to do the same thing, move it for another council meeting, so I'll keep my comments until then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norbecki.
Thank you. I mean, I much would have preferred that we dealt with this tonight, and the reason being, I feel that we heard all the pertinent information that we needed to hear regarding the legalities of it. And in terms of a delay, I don't think that that's necessary. It doesn't sound like I have support for that at the council table, so I'll go ahead and support our conversation about this in a future time. But I want to thank the delegation very much. I think it's very important we don't forget how you got here tonight. Previously this delegation wasn't allowed to present because it was deemed non-jurisdictional per city policy. I believe that went through the mayor and city manager, but we were able to bring that back to council for reconsideration and hear from the delegation tonight, but that came from your perseverance and commitment to this issue, and I look forward very much to discussing this further with my council colleagues, and just thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Lubeck.
I just wanted to, and I can't see anybody, but I just wanted to say thank you to the delegation for coming forward and also your perseverance. I think, it was great to hear the precedents that have been set both in Canada, across Europe, and in the United States, as well as understanding that there are 28 law professors that have weighed in on this. And I think, this very much harkens back to me to BC being the first jurisdiction that sued Big Tobacco in order to claim the healthcare costs that comes with that. I wanted to just ask, as far as some, and I do appreciate you talked about the legal professors, but are there any legal considerations that some of the other potential folks who are taking part in this potential class action lawsuit have brought up?
Oh, I'll
Please.
go ahead.
Kind of an open-ended question, so I'm trying to think how best to comment. I mean, I think that obviously this is for the party that ultimately becomes the lead plaintiff. This is a big undertaking. For the municipalities that are standing in support of the campaign and putting some resources to it, it may be much less significant undertaking in terms of the actual demands on resources or time. So there's certainly questions from local governments that I think feel like we're asking them to be the lead plaintiff, and at this stage we're actually just trying to demonstrate that there is support, so that when a lead plaintiff comes forward, that they will feel that they will know that there's support from other local governments. They can see that the court can see there's a class that wants to see this go forward. So I think a lot of the concerns come from the assumption that we're asking the municipalities to do more right now than we actually are. That being said, when a municipality comes forward and does act as lead plaintiff, I mean, obviously there's staff time involved in giving instructions, hiring a legal team, which would be specialists in class action law and civil litigation, and therefore not West Coast environmental law. We're here to push you to consider this, but we're not the ones being hired. And there's a lot of questions about making sure that they understand what those demands are. At this stage, there is not a local government that's indicated they're going to play that role. We're going to continue, and that's, as Justin said, any funds you pledge would be contingent on that actually happening. Not sure I fully answered that question, or whether something specific.
You definitely you definitely touched on the things I was hoping you would. Thank you so much.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. There's been a strong contingent of vocal proponents towards mitigating climate change, especially at the last couple meetings that you've been out. And I do want to appreciate and acknowledge the fact that we are in a climate crisis. This is a climate emergency, and that different actions are going to be needed across the spectrum to be able to get ahead of this, and hopefully, if we can't slow it down or can't stop it, slow it down so that we can create a better future for our children, ourselves, and of course future generations. So I do want to thank you for coming out tonight, and I'm looking forward to a wholesome discussion with my colleagues in regards to this request and hearing back from staff in that regard. And also, I'm not a huge fan of form letters. I know we did get a whole bunch of them, but to see how many postal codes there were that were from Port Moody, where people were going onto the site and sending in, even though it was a form letter, still means that there is interest and there is some passion behind trying to come up with that change and whatever means that happens to be getting change to happen. It was good to see people getting involved, and I hope that conversation continues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I think that we can't underestimate the damage that fossil fuels have done in terms of climate change, and anything that we can do in terms of trying to mitigate the costs for the residents of Port Moody, we should be considering. So I'm appreciative of the motion, because that will give us an opportunity to make consideration to your request, not only the general request, but also talk a little bit more about the types of things that we need to consider if we wanted to be a lead plaintiff and what that might involve. So I appreciate the motion, because there are some things that we should be considering in this going forward to determine how we want to be involved, if we want to be involved at all. But certainly I think that anything that we can do to mitigate the costs towards the city, we should be considering and looking at. So really appreciate your contribution here tonight, and we'll let you know when this comes back to a future agenda. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Councillor Knowles, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to have just a little last comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to note that we have actually several items on the agenda tonight that speak to addressing climate change in our community. So perhaps the delegation would like to hang out, and I'm hoping that all of them tonight will receive unanimous support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is minutes. Actually, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you.